Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Property Podcast Today show. As you know, I'm your host, Lee Dahill, and today we've got Kieran McGurk on the show, who's one of the directors at Reapit. We're going to be talking about advice, data, and AI. But as you all know, before we do any of the questions I've got lined up, I like my guests to do an introduction to a little bit about Kieran and his background. So before we do any of the questions, Kieran, if you could give us a quick overview from you, that would be amazing.
Yeah, no problem, Lee. So I am one of the product directors for Reapit. I've been with Reapit 13 years in various roles. So I've done training, sales, customer success, and now product. Before that, I worked as a negotiator and senior negotiator in industry. So I've seen this all from various different lenses.
Definitely, and that was kind of my first question was around your background in terms of being a negotiator, a trainer, and now being in the product leadership team at Reapit, which is how has your view of what makes a good agency data changed throughout your career?
Yeah, I think that's where kind of the lenses come in, right? In terms of at different times you have different perceptions. So like as a negotiator, for me, like good data was having a telephone number, a name, and kind of when they wanted to view. And then moving to training, kind of realizing that actually good data is much more about kind of consistency and making sure everyone uses the system properly and in the same way. And now working in product, I see data as one of agencies' most valuable assets. And it's not just kind of that sitting on the CRM, it's that collective memory of the business, like every valuation, viewing, offer, etc. Like the better that memory is, ultimately the smarter the agent can be.
Definitely, and obviously everyone is talking about AI right now, but how important is the quality of an agency's data in determining whether AI actually delivers value?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's absolutely critical. Like you've probably seen yourself, like AI can sound incredibly confident while being ultimately completely wrong. A skill possessed by a few of the agents I've trained as well over the years. But ultimately, AI is only ever going to be as useful as the information it can gain access to. Like if you've got good data, it's structured, it's up to date, you're going to get those patterns and you're going to get the right recommended actions. If your data's poor, you're essentially using like really advanced technology, but you're just going to end up generating bad answers. And I hark back to, like I say, the training days in terms of it was always like garbage in, garbage out. This is exactly the same, but probably with just a prettier interface, maybe.
And from what you've seen, what are the biggest data gaps or mistakes agencies are making today that are limiting what AI can do?
Yeah, it always comes back to kind of consistency. And ultimately, the biggest mistake is that inconsistency. You've got one negotiator that records absolutely everything, another that kind of keeps it in their head, someone who's created a spreadsheet that no one else knows exists, and the old kind of the hot box under the desk approach. Um, and then you start to see like the outdated applicant requirements, like property records, where like really key information is just completely missing. You see like maybe like an offer falling through and actually the reason that offers fall is completely blank. Well, without that, how can we look at actually how can we reduce that in the future? And the same as like evaluation lost, like who's it gone to? Why have they gone to kind of that competitor? Like no, and again, like it was always one of my pet peeves in agency. Like you always feel that accountability of like you've gone out, you've done evaluation, you've lost it. You don't really want to say that, oh, they went with that because they preferred that person, or let's say actually you went in, you're probably a bit toppy on your fee. Like, but actually sometimes having that honesty is actually going to create a much better data set for you. And those little small gaps that day to day you don't think about, like those fields, worry about that later, like they collectively are going to prevent AI from understanding genuinely what's happening in your businesses.
I agree. And what types of historical agency data becomes the biggest competitive advantage for AI? Valuations, applicant behaviour, fall throughs, landlord records, or is it something else?
I mean, it probably comes from connecting it all together at the end of the day. I mean, do you think of the old back vowels, as it were, in that kind of old list? Like that is useful, But when you then start to combine that with what were the market conditions at the time, what pricing decisions did we have, what ultimately was the vendor behavior in this, and what was the final outcome, that becomes more positive. And you need to be able to kind of draw the line together. Like if you're going through back valuations and the market has changed X% since you last went out there, that's actually a good news conversation to have with the vendor. But actually just trying to work that out in your head while kind of ticking the box to say you've phoned them for your KPIs, you start to lose kind of that value. I think another one is ultimately applicant behavior as well. It's another huge opportunity because what people say they want, what they actually then view and buy is often very different. And again, part of my neg training, one of the first things I remember, just because it's snappy, is the classic buyers are liars. So I thought it was a little bit harsh, but in terms of like people buy completely different to what they say. But if you get these trends of people saying, well, I'm looking for, I know, a 3-bed, and actually you're finding a lot of people are then buying 2 beds in a certain area. Actually, you can use that to your advantage in terms of knowing which properties are going to generate interest, but also what your next instruction is going to be. So it's probably like, for your question, like the competitive advantage, not necessarily like one magical kind of data set that you've got everything lined up perfectly. It's making sure you've got kind of that complete story. So as data goes in, you take it right the way through kind of step by step.
And some agencies are switching systems to access the latest AI features. Is there a risk they underestimate the value of the data they've built up over many years?
100%. Like, I think agencies sometimes view like switching CRM like as simply as changing like a mobile phone, right? You move over, you get all your contacts and start, basically kind of start again. But it's the decades of agency data that contain the relationships and the behaviors, as well as the outcomes, that it's impossible to recreate. The same as, let's say, if you are taking that applicant record from one system to another, yes, you might take the applicant, but is it actually taking the fact that they might have sold through you 2 years earlier? That can it link all that data up? That's actually the kind of true data that will allow you in the future to go through and actually ask the real kind of probing questions, and you start to get into the world of actually much more kind of predictive analytics in there. So the question probably shouldn't be like, what is the AI feature that the new system might have? It should also be, well, what intelligence are we leaving behind?
Okay. And many agencies have data across CRM, portals, specialist prop tech. How much does that fragmentation limit AI's ability to provide meaningful insights?
Yeah, so again, it's going to limit it massively. Like going back to kind of right at the start in terms of actually having that kind of centralized data that you can take kind of all the way through with you in there. Like AI is strongest when it can understand the full journey. And again, you'll know that there's kind of, you'd hope you'd have one version of the truth, but usually in a lot of offices, there's sort of 5. You've got the truth plus 3 logins plus a spreadsheet of final version 2. Like that's probably floating around somewhere in the Office OneDrive as well. Ultimately, if your property data is in the CRM, you can take that information and use it kind of as you require and manage that right the way through. So you don't end up with these fragmented data sets. And integration is probably not the most glamorous part of AI, but actually it may be kind of one of the most important, because before you can create intelligent answers, you ultimately need to be able to connect the information.
Yep.
And without kind of blowing our own horn on this, I think like Reapit's been ahead of the game for a long time in this space. If you look at historically how we were one of the first in terms of merging a sales and lettings database into one, having the accounts all in that single cell sort of data set, but also then the introduction of the app market. So having one sign-on that allows you to have the CRM as a single point of contact, while also benefiting from kind of the latest and greatest around the prop tech space.
And we're starting to hear AI being talked about beyond simple admin tasks. Where do you see it genuinely improving decision making for estate agents and letting agents?
Yeah, this is one of those where I think it's always difficult to judge, right? Because even if you look over the last year, 18 months, what we kind of see as AI is changing kind of so rapidly. And again, we've gone from AI's first kind of use case of being able to like send nice emails and basically a glamorized spell check, right the way to what we're seeing today with some of the decisions that Copilot, etc., can kind of make for you. But I think in agency, where the real benefits are going to start to come are kind of being able to automate the like repetitive tasks, or then elevating the bits that agents do best. And one of the things that always gets forgotten in this is like agency is very much like a people business. And actually, when agents are dealing with people, like they're not going to want to go through kind of this churn. Like it's the biggest purchase that anyone's going to make. So actually, I think the biggest opportunity is helping those negotiators, managers, etc., know where to focus their time. So what valuation should I be following up? What vendor is more likely to reduce their price? What applicant's most ready to move? Like those type of analytical thinking that AI can do while you're still going out and doing kind of the hard graft, as it were, right, in agency. And AI really shouldn't replace the agent's judgment, but it should give them better evidence and highlight things that they might otherwise miss. And we've tried to use this in our product strategy as well. And you'll see we did our kind of Copilot launch earlier, which was our kind of take on allowing kind of smart AI to go out with the agent on the go. And personally, I don't see AI viewings in the future being like the Terminator walking down the street right next to the sailboard. And I know Elon might have other ideas, but I don't think that's where it's going to go. But actually, in terms of, so how could AI make a viewing better? Allowing the agent to turn up, it's done their prep already for them. They know the buyer, they know the property, and they can ultimately achieve better outcomes while knowing the salient points. And I think having a kind of trusted AI tool that understands a state agency is so vital, rather than just plugging into ChatGPT or Gemini. Not to also mention, obviously, the security risks that that brings.
And looking ahead, what AI capabilities simply won't be possible without years of high quality agency data behind them?
Yeah, this is definitely where predictive analytics comes in, right? Accurate kind of prediction is very much like the obvious one. Like you can automate viewing property descriptions without much historical data, but actually predicting the likelihood of a fall through, even predicting the kind of the ideal asking price or forecasting landlord churn, for example, like these sort of key metrics that are truly going to have business impact, I think are going to be, let's say, completely impossible without that quality data behind them. And like the most valuable AI won't tell you kind of what has happened and look in the past. It's going to tell you what's likely to happen and potentially even what you should do about it. So it should give you suggestions. So we're not removing the agent's judgment on there, but it's prompting them in the right direction. So like, what do I need to do to potentially kind of rectify this? And this can only be reliable when it has that years of high quality data behind it. I think what we're going to see, certainly in the short, medium term, is very much a move of mindset from CRM's always been system of record, right? That's how you look at CRM. And again, as an agent, sitting there filling out forms is no fun. But actually, we're going to move that to kind of a system of record. And sorry, from a system of record to kind of a system of action. So actually, the AI is going to sit there doing, let's say, the mundane stuff in the background. It's also going to recommend what you should be doing as well, rather than just solely relying on you sitting there form filling. And as I said, like the world of AI is moving so quickly that actually kind of the exciting part with this new technology is that it's appearing on an almost daily basis, right? Like you go online, and the next thing there's a new tool here that's doing this. You think that was never possible. So actually, if you have the kind of the foundation of your high quality data, as this new technology comes in, you're actually going to be able to just kind of plug in and play off the back of that, because ultimately it's all going to be underpinned by that data.
And do you think the biggest divide over the next, say, 5 years will be between agencies that have invested in their data and those that haven't?
Yeah, again, I think I was going to say 100%, but I've said that a few times. So I'll go for yes. Like, I think in terms of like a divide between kind of agencies using AI as a genuinely competitive advantage and those who are using it to mainly kind of rewrite emails. Like, I'm going to sound a bit like my kind of training days here, but I don't think the difference is necessarily going to be like who bought the most AI tools. Like, that's not going to be kind of the race. It's very much going to be who's created the strongest foundations, who's got the clear data, who's actually put in place those consistent processes, who's connected those systems, but also elevated their teams to know like why recording that information matters. So I think you could potentially have two agents using exactly the same AI technology and getting completely different results just solely because of the data and the team behind it. And if you think in terms of kind of the AI investments, as I said, like you can go in every morning and you could buy a new AI tool because they're just churning out an absolute rate of knots. But actually, the smartest investment is actually training the teams to use systems to their fullest. Like make sure they're going through and, let's say, putting that data in. Like I say, obviously I'm a bit biased as an ex-trainer, but I feel that like the training we've done kind of with our agents at Reapit over the years, like these customers who have kind of followed those processes are going to really start to enjoy kind of the fruits of their labor from the hard graft that's already been done.
And my final question for you is, if you could give every estate agent one piece of advice about preparing for the AI era, what would it be?
It's $1 million question, right?
It is. That's why it's a good
but
question at the end.
it's a good one to finish on. It's going to be kind of, I would say, start treating every piece of data you enter today as something that ultimately is going to help you make a better decision tomorrow. Like record outcomes, capture reasons, update the applicants, and ultimately like close the loop. Like it may feel like that extra 30 seconds. And as I say, like this is one where if I was told this years ago, I might well have ignored it because, like I say, my focus was like get a telephone number, get a name, and I've got to get my 5 viewings for the day. But actually, that extra sort of 30 seconds now, if you multiply that kind of across the business in several years, it becomes an incredibly powerful asset for what is to come in the future. AI isn't going to be able to magically fix poor data, however much I'm sure there's some people that would love to. Like even AI is not going to find my old applicant notes that I sort of hid under my keyboard. So it very much goes down to, like I say, treat kind of that data with the respect. But ultimately, if the one tip is just make sure your staff are trained in these processes so that you're going to reap these benefits later on.
Kieran, thank you so very much for coming on the show. Very much appreciate it. And thank you for your time.
Amazing. Thank you very much for having me, Lee.
Thanks, Kieran.